thank you both. Thank you both for taking the time out. I guess the obvious first question is, where did the genesis of the idea for this come from?
Honestly, it kind of came from uh, this concept that, we want to tell a multiverse story. We want to kind of do it in more of an intimate way. And of course, time travel is like a close relative to the multiverse story, right? And we found with so many kind of early time travel stories, it always felt like sort of an excuse to tell a fantasy story. How do we get them to our characters to live amongst the dinosaurs or on King Arthur's court or whatever? And it wasn't until we watched movies like Back to the Future or the original Terminator where suddenly the stories felt way more intimate, and they felt more personal. And even though like a movie like The Terminator has such these like world-ending implications, when you're watching it scene by scene, it's such an intimate story about essentially two characters being chased by a third, and you could drop in at any time in that movie and not even realize it's a time travel movie or a movie about robots and AI. So it was really a desire to kind of tell an intimate story, and that's what got us thinking about if there's an infinite amount of universes out there, then the differences between so many of them would be infinitely small. It'd be just tiny details. So if you were traversing the multiverse to change your circumstances, how frustrating would it be to go from one identical universe to another and never really finding what you're looking for? And what does that do to a person? So that was really the seed that grew into Redux Redux.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause like, see, there are so many multiverse films, particularly in recent years, that have kind of, exploded. There's been,
Yeah.
I think everyone explores them in fantastical ways. It's like they have to really hammer home the differences that you are in a different universe. There's the hot dog fingers, or the sky is pink, or there's always got to be something fantastical. But I do really appreciate that you guys went in that more grounded kind of lo-fi direction where it's just simply, character smokes or doesn't, that must have been, I mean, working out, how those universes were different, if you weren't going to go that crazy way, that must have been quite an interesting way to kind of figure out.
It was a bit nerve-wracking. Kevin and I usually aren't huge continuity guys. We usually go, if people are paying attention to the continuity errors, we got bigger problems. With this movie, actually, it's pretty important that people are, the continuity is there because those are the Easter eggs. Those are kind of the fun little details. And yeah, you do notice that, oh, actually, Jonathan's smoking in the scene and he wasn't in the past one. And the mugs changed different colors and all these little details. And so yeah, we were sweating bullets because we're usually pretty bad at that. I'm sure we missed a lot of those continuity errors, and we'll just blame it on the multiverse in general. But it was hopefully a way to tell a story that felt even more personal, and you realize it's there's something sort of tragic about the multiverse if it doesn't have these kind of wild different universes and doesn't have those changes you're looking for, and they are sort of superficial. It makes her story a little bit more heartbreaking, I think, and that was something about that just rang true for us.
Mm. And it being a story about traveling across the multiverse, there is of course a machine. How did you guys come up with the design for that?
That machine was so fun to develop, like as just, movie fans. Getting your opportunity to make your own DeLorean is like the most exciting thing, right? So in the script, I think it was described as a refrigerator meets a coffin. And we talked to our production designer about it. We're like, how are we going to develop this thing? You know, there's so many different time machines, but there's not really any multiverse machines. We're like, let's do something, but let's have it harken back to all our favorite movies. Let's do a bit of the kind of prototype vibe of the DeLorean, but also the vehicles that all feel like they have a ton of miles on them from Star Wars. How can we do something? And as we're trying to develop what the look would be, I'm trying to sketch stuff out of what it might look like, and realized the best way I could try and describe it was grabbing some balsa wood and a hot glue gun. I have on my desk here. I built a little model of the multiverse machine. I was like, this is kind of what we're thinking. There's a little hand cart, and he's like, so it's small. So it's smaller than a hand cart. We're like, how big is a hand cart? Really, this is totally not to scale. And eventually, they're like, I know what you want. They started 3D rendering what it could look like, and it looks exactly like what you see on set. They had it all built out, and it was such a joy for us to see this prop come to life in all the ways we wanted it to, with all the cool wires and the buttons and all the fun stuff. So yeah, we had a blast building that one.
I mean, when it came to casting, you didn't have to look too far for Irene. Obviously, you've got your sister Michaela, but for Mia, you've got newcomer Stella Marcus. How did you guys find her, and what qualities did she bring to the role that perhaps weren't in the script.
She's so wonderful, and we were so lucky to find her. The role is difficult. It's a challenging character to pin down because you got to be funny, and you could be, uh, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. And we were hoping for somebody who would lighten the mood and also be this vehicle to pull Irene from the depths of her despair. And so we looked at tons of actresses, and there were many that were good, but we're looking for that certain chemistry. The cards were stacked against her. We had a call back, and we had 5 girls come in. 4 of them were in person, and the only one on Zoom was Stella because she was in New York at the time. The tough thing about that, of course, is that it's harder to have that chemistry on Zoom and harder to tell if it's going to be there in person. And sure enough, it broke through, and you just saw Michaela and Stella have this bond already. When she came on set, it was that times 10, and so it really felt like just an incredibly lucky shot. And this is her first movie, so what a special thing that we got to be a part of her first film of what I am sure is going to be a very long and successful career. And we hope that she doesn't outgrow us too quickly. We'd like to put her in as many movies as possible.
And also, it gives you yet another little linkage to, Terminator, because obviously Terminator 2, the opening credits is and introducing Lord Furlong, and you get to do the and introducing Stella Marcus.
For sure. You'll notice that she's wearing a remarkably similar outfit as John Connor is in that in that movie.
Yeah.
And it's all about
I
you.
honestly, I was very tempted to try and get rights to a Public Enemy t-shirt. And I was like, is this going to be way too on the nose? Maybe it'll be too on the nose.
So, I mean, it leads me nicely onto, my next question. Redux does have, a ton of Terminator and Terminator 2 DNA running through its veins. You've got some of the characters, who are literally named after, people that, made those movies. How aware, I mean, I'm guessing you kind of sort of answered it partially. How aware were you of the similarities, and how does it feel being, compared to James Cameron?
I mean, it was such a North Star for us. It kind of always is. That's just our favorite movie of all time. The original Terminator. There's something about it that's just, uh, it's just so in our DNA. So, would we have done even more of Terminator references if we could get away with that without it being too tacky? We definitely would have. But I think we were actually emailing with you at one point after you'd watched the movie. We're like, oh, if you notice the officers have last names from the original Terminator. You're like, yeah, I noticed immediately. You're like the only person who noticed it immediately. But it's always been a big reference point for us. It's a perfect movie, and the fact that people are spotting that we were inspired by it is kind of insane to us. I mean, uh, usually you reference movies all the time that people don't pick up on those references at all. And I think it's probably a little bit to do with the sci-fi nature of it, that fact that Michaela plays sort of a Sarah Connor type character, and that it's set in LA, and we try to take advantage of all the kind of classic LA noir, LA crime scenery. I mean, at one point, I think there's like 6 diners, and we're like, we have to find a different alternative than to a diner because I think we're filming in all of them in Los Angeles. But using all of those classic sets, I think has a way of feeling quite a bit like that original movie because stylistically shooting in LA and LA crime movie, it's in the DNA of the Terminator itself.
But it's like even down to scenes. I mean, I was saying to Matthew when we met at Fright Fest, just the scene between Irene and Jonathan, in the car, where she's kind of explaining her life. It is the role reversal. He is Terminator's Sarah Connor, and she is Terminator's Kyle Reese. So she's kind of explaining that. There's just so many like little things that probably even just like subconsciously have just kind of flowed into this film.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's certainly one of those scenes that felt more subconscious. But then when you watch the original again, you go, "This does look really similar." I guess that must be where this was coming from.
And as with your previous films, Redux Redux was made on a modest budget, and yet it looks and feels so expensive and expansive. You have a lot of locations for one. This is kind of a road movie alongside everything else. You've got a car chase, water stunts. What tricks did you guys utilize to kind of stretch that budget? Because it feels like you really wrung every penny.
I think one of the ways you try and really stretch your penny is to do a hyper amount of preparation. So you're not winging on the day. You're not getting inspired on the day. You don't really have time to do that. So much of it has to be built in such a way where your shot list is really your edit list. So every time you're firing a blank gun, every time a squib is going off, you have to of course do it safely. It takes time to do it. So you want to make sure the shot is the shot that's going in the movie when you do that kind of a thing. So we were very kind of specific about that. And then there were other places that we thought about, oh, can we cut a corner here doing something creatively? And one of the things that we uh, we had in the original cut that really had to go was we had a car crash in it, and we got this great idea of using models for the car crash. And we're like, this is going to be awesome. I've seen them do it before. We can do this. So Matt and I were convinced we could do a car crash with some toys, essentially glorified toys, and we film it. And we showed it some people on an iPhone and on a small screen. You're like, wow, that's super convincing. Oh my God. And then you put it on a big screen and it looked horrible. And Matt and I could not accept that it looked bad. We were like, this looks great. And we shared it with one of our close collaborators, Tony Ascenda and Dan Lagana, these two guys who gave us the real deal. They loved the movie. And then we were asking them all different questions about it. And eventually we said, what would you think of the car crash? And both of them said individually, they're like, well, that's not going in the movie, right? And we're like, oh, I mean, we thought it was pretty close to like, it is marginally better than a title screen. And we're like, oh shit, we are screwed. We really got to do something about that. So that the car chase suddenly became twice as long to cover that up so we could get Irene off and into the motel. So that was certainly one place where you cut one too many corners and the whole thing could fall apart.
I mean, we've spoken about Stella, we should also talk about Michaela. I mean, like I say, she's your sister. You guys have, grown up with her. So I guess that means that, exactly, where and when you can push her. I mean, I was just talking to her, she was talking about how, like, she got very involved with this
Oh, sorry, you cut out there for a second there. She got very involved with where? What'd you say?
at the stunts.
Oh, yeah, she did. Absolutely. Yeah, it was. I mean, the funny thing is that when you hire your sister, you can ask your sister to do things you would never ask another actress to do. And that was certainly the case with Michaela. There were moments where we're realizing, oh man, this is going to be really expensive. We have a stunt person for all of these shots. So we said, well, Michaela's going to do most of her own stunts. And she said, oh, I am. Oh, great. And so, but what's great is that she was so good at them. She was so can do. And her performance sells so many of those stunts. And I think it's such a treat to have that. She also, there was, I think, some of her first times ever shooting blank guns on camera. And, she's shooting full loads for the shotgun. She looks like Sarah Connor. She looks so cool. And it was really exciting to see this side of her. Kevin and I have been working with Michaela since we were little kids. And even, as we're all cutting our teeth in LA, and even still, sometimes we'll help her put herself on tape for different roles. We've seen her do so many different versions of herself. And it's really exciting to share this side of her with audiences because I think this is one of the things that she does the best. She's got that emotional core and she's got that tough attitude. I mean, I remember working with our sound mixer and he's watching it for the first time and he's like, man, your sister's pretty badass. Is she like really tough in real life? It's like, God, no, she's not like this at all. But it really speaks to just how incredible of an actress she is. And we couldn't be prouder of her performance.
Mm. And also, just I want to give a shout out to, Jim Cummings, who's a director in his own right. Do you find that, having somebody else that has that, filmmaking knowledge helps you guys, given the nature that it is such a, independent film?
Yeah, getting the opportunity to work with Jim is so much fun. He's been one of our close buddies for forever. We went to college together, and he's like, made a little cameo in all of our movies at some point, which has been really fun and was one of our first audiences when we finally got the first cut going to get his feedback on it. So yeah, we got this tight group of filmmakers in Los Angeles who, are all trying to support each other and lift each other up, and it's a joy to get to work with each other. In fact. Jim was driving some of the cars during the car chase as well. So he's has some hidden some hidden credits in there as well.
Nice. I'll have to, keep an eye out for Jonathan next time I see it. And the film, it's coming out in US theaters on the 20th of February. Why do you guys hope that, people go out and support this film?
There's just something about seeing a movie in a theater that is so special. And I think when you're putting the movie together, of course, that's the way you're picturing the way people will experience it. And it's such a short amount of time that it's in theaters. And then for the rest of the time, it's on your TV. And so you have this moment where you can go and you can check it out and you can get the full breadth of the sound, which I think is the thing that excites us the most. I think working at Skywalker Sound and dialing in that mix, we were so pleased with the work that they did and Duftone Sound did with us. And that's what I hope. And so if people have the opportunity, I know it's hard to get out to the movie theaters, but it's definitely our dream to as many people, if they want to see the film and they're excited about the film, please go see it in a theater. You just can't beat that experience.
Well, thank you both so much for your time and best of luck with the release. I'm actually going to be over in LA when it releases, so I am going to go and find a cinema
Oh, no
to
way.
go and see it in.
Oh,
Yes,
that's
yes,
great. Oh, well,
yeah.
we're gonna go to one of them. I think the whole crew is gonna go to one, so you'll have to come to that one if you're picking one. But yeah, it should be really fun.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you and best of luck with the film.